even when more up close, it looks accurate. It actually looks like those 1830s, 40s long coat that act like a bit like a bell, very snug on top, and then it really acts like a very long bell. His coat reaches up to the ankles, and very snug fitted sleeves, no shoulders at all, a wide collar and wide at the top, the revers and like that part are getting very wide and full. And at the same time the fabric is thin. It looks like an overcoat, but it's probably not an overcoat. It's meant to be worn on its own like he does in the movie. It is a very long frock coat. Some call it a paletot. They have many names for those types of coats. And it just has the silhouette, and it looks like it is genuinely old and distressed, and it does not look fake, and it looks like it is made out of some leather, or perhaps a very coarse sort of wool and mixed with linen, something like that. And it looks generally like something that could have been made even back in the 1830s, and he has been owning it for many years, and thus it looks very dirty because it practically never washed and all. And so, and it is flared, and with those details of those strings coming down at the hem, which would be in a coat that is that long, when outside, touching the ground often. I have known it from personal experience wearing long coats, and it looks superbly authentic in the movie with those turned back calves. Just amazing work for something that obviously I know is not an original, but I cannot tell. I mean, they could have told me it is an original, and I would have believed them. Again, I have not seen this in front of me, otherwise I would be able to tell it is not an original, but in the movie, perfect job. The hats, especially his, is wrong. 1863, like the rest of the movie, is said great, but not 1846. The brim is not wide enough, too curled. The hat, they might have had hats that high, that tall, the crown, but they would have been uncommon. But again, this is supposed to be a sort of over-the-top theatrical character, a gang leader called Bill the Butcher that wants to be noticed. So I accept that the crown would have been that high in 1846 for a character that exaggerated. But with the crown, I mean, the brim is wrong. Also, I've reckoned that the hat band is too wide for 1846. This is typical of the 1860s. So clearly, the hat maker was told to be making 1860s hats, and then they realized that, damn, they have the first 10 minutes set way back in 1800 he was told to make 1863 hats, and then they thought, the director probably thought, damn, well, the beginning of the film is actually set all the way back in 1846. So by the by, I said 16 years back, although it should be 17, but I think the movie is set in late 63, or this is from the movie. I mean, in the movie it starts off, it says New York 1846, after that scene, and then it says 16 years later, and then we land in 1862 or 3, so there might be something wrong with my saying 16 years, but this is what they say in the movie, and never mind. I mean, for the year 1846, the hats are what is the most noticeable, and a lot of them, especially the front, most noticeable gang members, are supposed to probably be copying Bill the Butcher, the leader, and they all have high crown top hats, and all their brims are somewhat too narrow and too curled for many of them for 1840s, even 46 top hats. And now, like, I will move on, and now I want to say something about the braces. The braces are totally wrong. Braces like that did not appear before at least 1885 for perhaps the most modern avant-gardist youth one could find, but all of that to be said, I will not say before 1890, and yet they were not popular before probably early 90s, 1910, and this is set in 1846, so this is totally wrong. Completely wrong. And then in the next part of the movie they still have places like that, and when it's set in 1863, this is just wrong. This is impossible. This does not exist. They have these common braces, unlike mine. I'm sporting now. These common braces, the most popular now since almost a century, which is an overlapping of fabric, and one decreases or increases the straps by the means of a buckle. This really did not become popular, as I said, before the early 1900s. Probably it might have existed. No, I know there's an ad by Albert Fuston depicting such braces. The ad is from the drawing. The ad is from 1874. But in 1846, I do not believe this existed. And if it existed, they will not be worn by damn poor uneducated gang members of New York in the West Slum ever. Back then, in the 1840s, precisely, it was when, during the 1830s and 40s and even 20s, was when the 5 Ponds where this precise scene is set, and this of the movie is set, was considered by Charles Dickens himself, who knew the East End like the back of his hand. And when he visited, because I researched that movie, he said, "My God, I did not believe that it could have been worse than the worst parts of East End. The East End by itself was the worst slum in the Western world," and he knew the worst parts of the East End. So he said, "I could not believe it would be worse, but it is by far worse, something like that." So this is set in that precise era. Later on, it is set in the 1860s. They had made a lot of progress, but in the movie, they made it as if it was as bad as the 1840s. That was the director's decision. There was an explanation for that decision. I'm not going to go into it. People on YouTube already explain it. He himself, I think, explains it. 20 years ago, he explained it. Martin Scorsese. But so for the beginning of the movie, which is set in 1846, this is completely impossible. I mean, these poor people from slums, uneducated people, would not have had something that I think is so modern that it could simply not even have existed. And if it is supposed to be a super modern, super young, super rich son of the Queen herself, all right, perhaps it has one pair like that. But now to see all the gang members wearing these pairs is just plain inaccuracy. This is probably simply a mistake and not a director's decision, or anything, simply something they did not know. Again, there was no internet like it is now back in 2002, so researches were hard. And so yeah, it's just a mistake in my opinion. The trousers too are probably 1860s style. The trousers, I can see that. I'm going to move on now because I'm talking to them now. None of the characters I can see have bibs on the front of their shirts, a few of them. But I do not see this bib tab at the end of the bosom of the shirts. So also they had bosoms on shirts back then, since a long time, since at least 20 years or more, 25 years. So I cannot, maybe it is not inaccurate as per me. So I will play the movie.
Is this it, priest? The Pope's new army?
So yes, I just want to say that Billy Bush has just said the Pope's new army. So this is 641, and if you pause there, you will see there's a character in the back wearing a tall top hat that is sort of creased, like a bit like a fedora, especially at the top, as if the character. So it looks more natural. It looks more like it is something aged. The character was not careful with. He tips it off like that, or perhaps it was made on purpose. And also the brim is the brim is much wider. It is curled, but it is much wider as the ratio compared to the height of the crown. Also his blue band, will have a blue band to show that they are natives. This is true, this is historically accurate. All these gangs existed, and they actually wore a blue band, especially when in fights. Apparently it was to show that they are Native Americans, whatever. And by the way, these are albino, white, like me, looking Native Americans. These are not the actual Native Americans that are called American Indians. These are racist, white people, albino, like me, invaders, that probably descendants of the English that came during the 17th, 18th century, I meant. And then when the white, and some of them were not white, but anyhow, when the Irish came, and this is all historical, when the Irish came, they were saying, well, some of you Irish are not even white, and even those that look like me, well, we do not consider you white, or whatever color you are not native, you are a foreigner, you just came and you're making trouble, and so blast off. And but so all these so-called natives are actually very racist, are against brown